15 fast-spreading and easy-to-grow perennials that bloom all summer long. Hey there, garden dreamers and green-thumbed souls. Welcome back to Earthly Delights, the place where houseplants meet garden beds, and every leaf tells a story. Whether you're someone who just brought home your first indoor pothos or a backyard grower chasing your next big bloom, you're in the right place. Now, if you're like most of us, juggling a busy life, craving beauty without the back-breaking work, then today's episode is made for you. Maybe you've tried annuals that fizzled out too soon, or you've spent hours weeding and watering only to end up with a garden that looks meh. But imagine this instead. Stepping outside and being greeted by waves of color, buzzing bees, and blooms that just won't quit. And all you did was plant them once. That's the magic of fast-spreading, easy-to-grow perennials that bloom all summer long. And today I'll walk you through 15 of my all-time favorites, some you may know, and others you'll wish you had planted years ago. So grab a cup of tea, settle into your favorite chair, and get ready to transform your garden into a living, breathing masterpiece. And hey, if you love practical gardening wisdom with a touch of soul, don't forget to subscribe to Earthly Delights so you never miss a single bloom. Let's get growing. Part 1. The Color Igniters. Let's kick things off with what I like to call the color igniters. The bold, beautiful bloomers that bring your garden to life, even when you've done very little. These are the stars that greet your guests before you even say hello, and they're the reason your neighbors might just peek over the fence with garden envy. These plants are especially perfect if you're transitioning from indoor gardening to outdoor beds. You still want color, structure, and growth, just without daily watering or delicate pruning. Whether your garden gets full sun, partial shade, or a mix of both, the plants in this section are designed to shine. 1. Coreopsis, tickseed. Now, let's start with a true garden sunshine, Coreopsis. If your space ever feels dull or a little too green, this plant changes the mood instantly. With cheerful, daisy-like blooms that range from bright lemon yellow to soft pinks and even fiery reds, Coreopsis spreads joy as much as it spreads roots. And yes, it spreads. Coreopsis multiplies by both self-seeding and underground rhizomes, meaning it will gently take over in the most charming way. It thrives in full sun, tolerates drought like a champ, and does just fine in average soil. No pampering needed. It's also a favorite among pollinators, bringing in bees and butterflies like it's hosting a summer-long garden party. Just remember to snip off spent blooms now and then. That's all it takes to keep it flowering well into fall. So if you want instant impact, fuss-free care, and a wild splash of color, Coreopsis is your go-to. Let's keep this blooming train going. Wait till you see what's next. Blanket flower, Gaillardia. If Coreopsis is garden sunshine, then blanket flower, or Gaillardia, is summer's fire, bold, brilliant, and impossible to ignore. These daisy-like blooms come dressed in fiery reds, oranges, and yellows, like the glowing coals of a sunset that just won't quit. What makes blanket flower such a favorite for both beginners and seasoned gardeners is its sheer toughness. Poor soil? No problem. Forget to water? It'll survive. Hot summer sun? It thrives. This is the kind of plant you can count on, season after season, with very little maintenance. Gaillardia spreads by both clumps and self-seeding, so once it's in the ground, it starts working for you, covering bare spots, bringing in bees and butterflies, and adding movement and energy to your beds or borders. Deadhead it when you can for even longer blooming, but even if you forget, it'll still reward you with color from early summer straight through fall. It's especially beautiful in rock gardens or wildflower meadows, and yes, it does well in containers too. Coming up next, a plant that doesn't just bloom beautifully, it smells incredible too. 3. Bee balm, Monarda. Now, if you're craving a garden that feels alive, like truly buzzing with life, then bee balm is your next must-have. Known for its firework-shaped blooms in shades of scarlet, pink, lavender, and even white, bee balm doesn't just turn heads, it draws in hummingbirds, butterflies, and bees like magnets. What's more, bee balm is a vigorous spreader. It multiplies through underground rhizomes, quietly expanding every season to fill in garden beds or wild patches with joyful bursts of color. And here's a bonus for those dealing with nosy deer or nibbling rabbits. They tend to avoid it, thanks to its minty-scented foliage. This perennial loves full sun, but can handle partial shade too. especially in warmer regions. Keep its soil consistently moist, and it'll reward you with a long flowering season that lasts well into late summer. To keep things fresh, simply remove spent blooms and divide clumps every couple of years. You'll prevent overcrowding while encouraging even more blooms. With its bold colors, wildlife-friendly nature, and low-maintenance charm, bee balm adds both drama and soul to your summer garden. Up next, a softer, romantic bloomer that's just as easy to love. 4. Catmint, Nepeta. Now let's shift gears from bold and fiery to soft and serene with the ever-graceful catmint, or Nepeta. If your garden needs a calming touch, something dreamy, flowing, and fragrant, this plant is like a gentle breeze in floral form. Catmint blooms in waves of lavender blue spikes above silvery gray foliage that looks beautiful even when it's not in flower. It starts blooming in late spring and keeps going through summer, often well into early fall with just a little trimming. It's a favorite for those who want low-maintenance beauty. Once established, catmint is drought-tolerant, thrives in poor soil, and shrugs off heat without complaint. Plus, deer and rabbits steer clear, while bees and butterflies come in droves. Plant it along borders, paths, or near sitting areas where you can enjoy its subtle scent and relaxed charm. Shear it back by a third after the first big bloom to encourage fresh growth and another flush of flowers. For gardeners moving from houseplants to outdoor color, catmint is a perfect step. It's forgiving, floriferous, and utterly enchanting. Coming next, a perennial that multiplies like magic and offers fresh blooms nearly every day. Part 2. Ground Cover Champions. Now that we've lit up the garden with bold color, let's turn our attention to the quiet achievers, the ones that don't just bloom, but build the garden from the ground up. This next group of perennials is all about coverage. They spread quickly, fill gaps effortlessly, and create a lush, cohesive feel without ever looking overgrown. If you've ever stared at a patch of bare soil wondering what to do with it, these plants are your answer. They're especially perfect for anyone who's used to tending to potted plants indoors, where space is limited and roots are contained. But once you step outside, these ground cover champions teach you a new kind of joy, watching your plants spill, stretch, and thrive without limits. 5. Hardy geranium. Let's start with one of my all-time favorites, the hardy geranium, often called cranesbill. Don't confuse it with those upright geraniums in pots. This one hugs the ground, spreads in dense mats, and throws out charming pink, blue, or purple blooms that last for months. It's the kind of plant that seems to know where to grow, weaving between stepping stones, hugging the base of shrubs, or tumbling gently over borders. And once it's happy, it multiplies like magic, creating a lush, flower-speckled carpet with very little help from you. Cranesbill thrives in full sun to partial shade, tolerates poor soil, and handles dry spells like a champ. Just trim it back after the first bloom to encourage fresh growth and a second flush of flowers. It's also rabbit-resistant and rarely troubled by pests. So if you're looking to turn empty patches into something quietly beautiful, cranesbill is your easy, elegant solution. Coming up next, a plant that's just as generous, but with a wild herbal twist. 6. Catmint, Nepeta. Now, if you missed catmint in the first act, let me reintroduce it here, not just as a color highlight, but as a ground-cover champion in its own right. Yes, catmint pulls double duty. With its flowing, low-mounding habit and long spikes of lavender blue blooms, it's a dream come true for filling in those awkward, empty spaces in your garden. What makes catmint such a standout in this category is its clumping spread. It's fast but not invasive. Over time, it forms wide drifts of soft color and fragrant foliage that tie together flower beds, edge paths gracefully, and bring harmony to the whole space. It's extremely forgiving too. Dry soil? No problem. Neglected watering? It doesn't mind. Hungry deer? They'll skip right past it. Meanwhile, pollinators like bees and butterflies absolutely love it. Once it finishes its first bloom, just shear it back by about 1/3, and it'll bounce back with fresh flowers in a few weeks. It's low maintenance, long blooming, and endlessly versatile, a favorite among beginners and seasoned gardeners alike. 7. Lamium, dead nettle. Let's talk about a plant that's wildly underrated. Lamium, also known as dead nettle. Don't let the name fool you. This is one of the most charming and hardworking ground covers you can add to your garden. Perfect for those tricky, shady spots where nothing else seems to thrive. Lamium spreads quickly, forming a lush, silvery carpet that reflects light and adds texture even when it's not blooming. And when it does bloom, you'll see delightful little flowers in soft purples, pinks, or whites peeking through the foliage like tiny surprises. Lamium is a shade lover's secret weapon. It thrives under trees, along fences, and even at the base of taller perennials where sunlight is scarce. It's also an ideal transition plant for indoor gardeners used to indirect light conditions. It spreads by trailing stems that root wherever they touch the soil, making it easy to control yet fast enough to make an impact. And the best part? It's deer-resistant, low maintenance, and almost never needs watering once established. So if you've got dull, dark corners in your garden, Lamium will brighten them up in the most graceful way. Coming up next, we're stepping back into the sun for a perennial that's practically glowing with golden charm. Part 3, Summer Garden Classics. Now that we've covered the ground, literally, it's time to spotlight the icons. These are the perennials that have earned their place in countless gardens across generations. Why? Because they work. They're reliable, beautiful, and they keep blooming their hearts out with barely any encouragement. If you're someone who grew up watching a grandparent tend to zinnias or daisies in the backyard, this part will feel like coming home. And if you're newer to gardening, especially transitioning from tidy pots to full flower beds, these plants will be your most trustworthy guides. They're the type of flowers that bloom even when you forget about them, and they somehow make even the wildest garden look lovingly intentional. 8. Black-Eyed Susan, Rudbeckia. First up in this Hall of Fame, the radiant Black-Eyed Susan. With her golden yellow petals and dark chocolate centers, she's like the garden's version of eternal sunshine. Black-Eyed Susan is a native wildflower with serious stamina. Once she's rooted in, she spreads confidently through both self-seeding and rhizomes, forming clusters of color that come back stronger every year. And let's be honest, who doesn't love a plant that looks this cheerful and asks for almost nothing in return? Give her a spot in full sun, and she'll reward you with blooms from early summer well into fall. She doesn't mind poor soil, shrugs off heat, and needs little more than the occasional watering during dry spells. Deadhead the spent flowers to encourage even more blooming, and divide the clumps every few years to keep her healthy and in check. Whether you're planting a pollinator patch, lining a country fence, or just adding joy to your front yard, Black-Eyed Susan will never let you down. 9. Shasta Daisy, Leucanthemum exsuperbum. If Black-Eyed Susan is sunshine, then the Shasta Daisy is your garden's pure white spotlight, clean, classic, and impossible to miss. With snowy white petals surrounding a bright yellow center, Shasta Daisies bring a crisp elegance to any outdoor space, and they bloom with such dedication that you might think they run on garden magic. This perennial spreads steadily through clumping roots and self-seeding, making it a fantastic choice for borders, open beds, or wildflower gardens. Shasta daisies thrive in full sun and well-drained soil and are surprisingly drought-tolerant once established. The care is refreshingly simple. Deadheed spent flowers to keep the blooms coming and cut back the stems in late fall. Every few years, divide the clumps to prevent overcrowding and rejuvenate growth. For anyone moving from indoor plants to their first outdoor garden, the Shasta daisy offers a sense of structure and grace, like a tidy white frame around a colorful painting. It pairs beautifully with coneflowers, lavender or yarrow, and always brings a calming rhythm to the chaos of summer blooms. 10. Coneflower, Echinacea. Next on our list is the resilient and radiant coneflower, or Echinacea, a true garden warrior cloaked in elegance. With its signature daisy-like shape, central cone, and petal shades ranging from purples and pinks to fiery oranges and snowy whites, this perennial doesn't just survive, it thrives. Coneflowers are a pollinator's paradise. Bees, butterflies, and even hummingbirds can't resist their nectar-rich blooms, which begin in early summer and often carry on until the first frost. Better yet, they're heat-tolerant, drought-tolerant, and totally unfazed by poor soil. Once planted, Echinacea steadily spreads by clump expansion and self-seeding, quietly turning one or two plants into a generous patch of color over a few seasons. If you're coming from indoor gardening, this is one of the best bridge plants, just as low maintenance as a pothos, but with a bigger payoff outdoors. Deadheading will keep the blooms coming, but leaving some seed heads through fall adds winter texture and offers food for birds. Truly, coneflower is a low-effort, high-impact classic that brings structure, color, and purpose to any sunny garden. Next, we're turning up the heat with a perennial that thrives in the toughest conditions and burns brighter than a summer sunset. Part 4. Big on pollinators, low on effort. If you've been craving a garden that feels alive, not just full of flowers but humming with life, then this next group is for you. These perennials are like open invitations to butterflies, bees, and even hummingbirds. And the best part, they don't ask for much in return. For those of you coming from the world of houseplants, where it's often just you and your monstera in a quiet corner, get ready for a whole new level of connection. There's something powerful about stepping outside and watching life move through your garden. This section is for those who want that experience, but without daily maintenance. These plants thrive in the background while you live your life. They bloom generously, self-sustain, and make your space feel like a sanctuary without constant care. 11. Garden phlox, Phlox paniculata. Let's start strong with the striking garden phlox, known for its towering clusters of pink, purple, red, or white blooms that float like clouds above the green. This perennial doesn't whisper, it sings. From midsummer through early fall, garden phlox becomes a magnet for pollinators, especially butterflies. It's upright and elegant, adding vertical drama to cottage gardens, borders, or even more structured layouts. And it spreads generously through self-seeding and underground shoots. Garden phlox prefers full sun but will tolerate a bit of afternoon shade. It loves rich, moist, well-drained soil and rewards regular watering with non-stop color. To avoid issues like powdery mildew, space the plants well and ensure good airflow. Deadhead spent blooms to encourage new flowers, and every few years divide the clumps to keep them vigorous. If you want long-lasting color that practically glows, garden phlox is your reliable, pollinator-friendly partner. Yarrow, Achillea. Say hello to yarrow, the quiet champion of tough conditions and timeless charm. With its flat-topped clusters of blooms in shades of yellow, pink, red, or white, and its soft, fern-like foliage, yarrow brings both texture and color to your summer garden, and it asks for next to nothing in return. This perennial is made for gardeners who don't want to fuss. It spreads easily through rhizomes and self-seeding, making it ideal for filling large open spaces, wildflower meadows, or those tricky dry spots where other flowers give up. Yarrow thrives in full sun and poor, well-drained soil. Once established, it becomes incredibly drought-tolerant and shrugs off pests, deer, and even rabbits. Just deadhead the faded blooms to encourage more flowers, and cut back the stems in late fall or early spring to keep it tidy. Best of all, yarrow attracts a wide range of pollinators, including bees, butterflies, and beneficial insects. So while it's quietly growing and blooming, it's also helping your garden thrive from the ground up. 13. Milkweed, Asclepias. If you're looking to add meaning to your garden, milkweed is more than just a plant. It's a lifeline. This unassuming perennial is the primary host plant for monarch butterflies, giving their caterpillars a place to feed and grow before transforming into winged wonders. Milkweed comes in several varieties, with blooms ranging from orange and pink to soft whites. These star-shaped flowers bloom steadily through summer, offering both beauty and purpose. And yes, it spreads. Through rhizomes and self-seeding, milkweed expands gracefully across sunny beds and wildflower patches. It thrives in full sun and average to poor soil, and once it takes root, it becomes incredibly drought-tolerant. Maintenance? Almost none. Just allow the pods to dry and release their seeds naturally, or collect them if you'd like to share with friends or plant in new spots. For those of you who've nurtured indoor plants with care and intention, milkweed brings that same soulful connection to the outdoors. Only now, your nurturing helps an entire species survive. Part 5. Vertical drama and natural structure. At this point, your garden is already bursting with color, buzzing with life, and filled with graceful ground covers. But every masterpiece needs structure. That's where this final group of perennials comes in. These plants bring height, texture, and vertical drama, giving your garden the layers and shape that take it from pretty to to unforgettable. If you've spent years arranging indoor plants by height on shelves and stands, you already know how important vertical balance is. Outdoors, it's no different, except now the sky's the limit. These perennials don't just stand tall, they hold their heads high with pride and bring movement, rhythm, and elegance to every breeze that passes through. They're also perfect for those who want to define garden zones, create visual interest, or simply grow something that rises above the rest without demanding constant care. 14. Obedient plant. Physostegia virginiana. Don't let the name fool you. Obedient plant is anything but obedient when it comes to spreading. But that's exactly why it's so loved. With tall, spiky blooms in shades of pink, lavender, or white, it adds instant height and color to your garden from midsummer through fall. This perennial spreads quickly via underground rhizomes, making it ideal for large beds or naturalized areas where you want coverage with personality. It thrives in full sun to partial shade and prefers moist, well-drained soil, though it's surprisingly adaptable. Pollinators adore it. Bees, butterflies, and even hummingbirds show up in droves. And here's a fun twist. The flower spikes can actually be gently repositioned and will stay where you place them, hence the obedient nickname. To keep it in check, divide clumps every couple of years, and if needed, use garden edging to contain its growth. If you love a plant that brings height, color, and a bit of garden mischief, obedient plant fits the bill. 15. Globe Thistle, Echinops. Rounding out our list is the striking and sculptural globe thistle, a plant that adds instant sophistication and structure to any sunny garden. With its spiky, silvery blue spherical blooms perched atop tall, sturdy stems, globe thistle looks like something out of a dreamscape, otherworldly, yet perfectly at home among your summer flowers. But don't be fooled by its dramatic appearance. This perennial is tough. It thrives in poor, dry soils, loves full sun, and is highly drought-tolerant once established. It spreads steadily through clumps and self-seeding, gradually forming impressive stands of vertical color. Pollinators adore its nectar-rich blooms, especially bees and butterflies. And deer? They'll pass it right by. Globe thistle is especially great for gardeners looking to contrast soft, cottage-style flowers with bold structure. It pairs beautifully with ornamental grasses, black-eyed Susans, or coneflowers. To keep it looking its best, remove spent blooms to encourage more flowering, and cut it back in late fall. That's it. It's a striking finale to any garden story, and the perfect way to elevate your space from casual color to crafted beauty. Now let's bring it all together with one final thought. And just like that, we've journeyed through 15 of the most fast-spreading, easy-to-grow perennials that bloom all summer long. From the cheerful tickseed and the fire-toned blanket flower to the pollinator havens of bee balm and milkweed, each one brings something unique to your garden, whether it's color, texture, height, or purpose. If you're someone who loves indoor greenery but longs for that outdoor magic, or maybe you've felt overwhelmed by complicated gardening advice, let this be your gentle nudge. You can have a thriving, low-maintenance garden that fills your soul and feeds the bees, and you don't need a green thumb to get there. Start small. Pick 1 or 2 plants from this list. Let them teach you. Watch them bloom. And then let the magic spread. Which of these perennials are you most excited to plant? Or do you already have a favorite that's quietly taken over your garden in the best possible way? Let us know in the comments. We love hearing your stories. And if this video bloomed some inspiration in your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Earthly Delights for more soulful gardening wisdom, one season at a time. Until next time, keep planting, keep growing, and keep delighting in the earth.